At best, the alien abduction phenomenon is a terrifying, traumatic experience. At its worst, well, we think they sometimes take people and don't put them back.
I lost my mother and brother to this trauma. He murdered her, then killed himself.
These women are being used as human incubators, with all their children stolen away into the night.
A 6-foot-tall entity of blue-white light paralyzed me, then bent down and said into my ear, "Hi, Steve." It knew my name.
We hear gruesome stories of experiments and dissections. Imagine dying on a metal table while paralyzed, surrounded by alien faces. It's a real horror story. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our show, Abductions 101, UFOs and the Paranormal Connection. My name is Leslie Shaw.
I'm Stephen Shaw.
And we wanted to talk again about more missing people. Our missing persons show just dropped on Friday, but right after we recorded the show, the very next day, another person was discovered, and we talked about that in our last show.
Yes.
But now, yet again, there's yet another person, and Steve's going to tell you about that person.
Yes, this person isn't missing. This person is actually dead. But anyway, it's just another one. Okay, another scientist. Her name was Amy Eskridge. She is 34 years old. She was an anti-gravity researcher. She died of supposedly a self-inflicted gunshot wound in June of 2022. Now, she started a company called Institute for Exotic Science, okay? And she was in a 2020 interview, and I just watched the interview where she was saying that she started the Institute because her intent was to release the truth about anti-gravity to the general public. And she said also, too, that it was her belief that if you stick your neck out far enough that you'll get noticed, and that's the important thing. She wanted to get noticed, and she would think that maybe was going to protect her. She started getting death threats and to her personal safety. She also said that she intended to disclose information about UFOs. Okay.
Oh, that's what got her killed.
All right.
Right
So
there,
in addition to the anti-gravity and wanting to release this information to the public, she died mysteriously. There has been no investigation by the coroner's office or by the police. They've been no follow-up investigation because, once again, they're ruling it as a suicide. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But this person, I watched it. She's 34 years of age. She had no reason to put a gun to her head and just to kill herself. I mean, her whole intent was to release this information, but she was definitely getting threats. And this just underlines again what we've been saying, that there's more to come.
Yeah, they're discovering more every day. And
Burchett said it best. They said there were a couple, when we were doing the 8 and 4 show, and right after we did that, now it's 2 more since then. He said they hadn't been released yet, but they were going to be released.
Actually, and if to brag, I suppose, but when I first heard about McCasland's disappearance,
yep, we both said it.
I think that we're likely to get more.
Just the tip of the iceberg. Yep.
Yeah. Because it seems to us like the legacy program is closing ranks.
Yeah.
And eliminating people willing to disclose.
Yeah. I mean,
people who've shown their willingness, and these are all insiders into these programs where UFOs were being studied and reverse engineered.
That's right. We know that UFOs use anti-gravity.
Yes, so, they do.
Of course.
In fact, Lazar described them. Bob Lazar said that the smaller ships have 3 gravity emitters. Mm-hmm. 1 pointed down, which creates lift, and 2 emitters pointed forward. Their engines are pointed forward, unlike our engines. Their gravity emitters pointed forward would then create a gravity bubble in front of the ship that it
almost would dive down into.
Falls into it and takes off at these supersonic speeds.
And of course, they have inertia dampeners too.
And that's why they can. That's what they're inside this gravity bubble. They're safe from weapons. That's why our weapons bounce off of these things, and they're safe from underwater. That's why they don't slow down when they go underwater.
Right.
Right.
So I just want to give the audience a little bit of an update. There'll probably be next time we do another show, we'll probably do another one.
Yep.
As far as I don't know when it's going to stop, so.
That might be all we talk about in our intros for quite some time. But anyway, we have a wonderful guest for you tonight. We're having him back for a second time, actually. His name is Joshua Sisler.
Yes.
Of ancient
Atslan.
Aztlan, not Atslan. Aztlan. I mispronounce it sometimes, and I apologize in advance for that, Joshua. But he's going to be our wonderful guest tonight, and we'll discuss more of these about the wonderful Mexican artifacts that are coming out of that area.
Hold on.
And Joshua is a wonderfully ascended being. He's wonderful to talk about the spiritual aspects of these finds as well.
The spiritual and the scientific, they're yin and yang. They go together. So just hold on, everybody.
All right. And we'll be back in just a few minutes.
Okay.
Good evening. Are you wondering if the UFO phenomenon is real?
Are you wondering who is flying the UFOs in our skies?
Are you wondering if aliens are really abducting people?
Then you need to read this book.
The book is titled Who They Are and What They're Up To.
Find out the true identity of the aliens.
Learn a very brief history of the UFO cover-up.
Find out where the aliens are hiding.
Find out why our government is in league with them.
Learn about their bizarre hybrid breeding program.
Find out why their technology is 13,000 years ahead of ours.
The reference section of this book alone is worth the price.
Again, that was Who They Are and What They're Up To by Leslie and Stephen Shaw.
Now available on Amazon and coming soon in the Spanish and Czech languages.
And soon to be in English and Spanish audiobooks.
With a new foreword by fellow author and abductee Karen Wilkinson.
Again, that was Who They Are and What They're Up To by Leslie and Stephen Shaw, now available on Amazon. Good evening again, everyone. My name is Leslie Shaw and my husband, Stephen Shaw.
Hello.
And welcome back to our show, Abductions 101, UFOs and the Paranormal Connection. Tonight we have a wonderful guest. His name is Joshua Sisler.
Many of you may know him.
You may know him from the ancient Atslan postings and various other ways. He's going to let you know how many ways there are to.
He's going to do the intro for himself.
Find out about, yes.
Wonderful.
Joshua, take it away, please. Tell us all about yourself.
Yeah, it's always exciting to reconnect with you guys. My name's Joshua Sisler. I'm one of the lead researchers investigating the anomalous artifacts that are coming out of central Mexico. So at this time, there's a topic that we need to honor because these artifacts, in a sense, are going to rewrite our historical timeline. And once we honor these beautiful artifacts, I'll kind of share one with you right now. Once we start to honor these artifacts, right, honored through antiquity, right, then we start to accept them into our collective consciousness. But right now, they're being described that they're just being created, tourism in Mexico. But when you really study them, not one of them is a replica, right? There's no replication. Every single piece holds visual codes. And so what I've been doing is I've actually, rewritten core belief systems, which have allowed me to study these in a different way without the blockage and the distortion of doubt and skepticism. So it allows you to then integrate the information in a unique way. So anyways, I just wanted to start that off by kind of sharing with you a little bit imagery of the artifacts. And I just, finished my very first episode on Gaia TV with Regina Meredith on Open Minds. And if you want, you can go on over. Right here is my link right here in the video to the link tree. It'll take you over to all of my access nodes like Instagram, YouTube. I'm really trying to grow my YouTube right now. It's at Ancient Aztlan. That's ANCIENTAZTLAN. And, I'm putting out some amazing videos. I'm really tapping into the old world, some of the Tartaria topics, and hopefully we'll get into a lot of these exciting topics today. Right now, my book is actually on pre-order on my website. And if you want to support,
congratulations.
Thank you so much. Yeah. And this one's completely dedicated to the artifacts that are coming out of Ojuelos de Jalisco, Mexico. The anomalous artifacts that are carbon dating at 8,000 plus years old. And so, this is stuff that we will start to unlock, and it will affect, the outcome of our collective consciousness as we start to honor these artifacts.
We'd love to talk to you about, of course, like the manganese patina that is really helping to back up things you're talking about, besides, you know, the terrestrial cosmogenic nucleotides and the other ways of dating.
Yes.
Of course, we have our piece that we...
Yeah, it has a lot of this we think a lot of this
manganese patina.
Show it to him, Steve.
I think he knows about this piece because do
you remember it? I just wanted to remind him.
I love this piece. Yeah, there's a lot of magic to these artifacts, and what you're talking about is the patina, right? It's a mineral deposit that will form on the artifact, and the only way that this type of layering and aging and patina, right, these manganese deposits that we can now witness and study, right, we can zoom in with the right magnification, and we can actually witness the dendritic like patterns that are growing. It's the manganese deposits that have formed on the surface of the artifact. And why is this such a powerful discovery? It's because the artifacts have been shaped and polished. And so if you shape and polish a stone that's been out in Mother Nature, you'll remove all of those calcifications, all of the manganese on it. But what's happened is actually the manganese has now grown over the engravings. It's grown over all of the carvings. And so that's when you have that confirmation that you can't deny this fingerprint from Mother Nature, right? This is an expression that can only form through thousands of years of time of mineral rich water depositing and allowing this to grow, right? This manganese or what other patinas that we do see.
And we're talking thousands of years as far as
I mean, at the
I think it takes at least 500 years to even begin, right?
Years at the very minimum, but we're witnessing full dendritic patterns, which takes thousands, you know, so it starts to form, right? But then when you get these beautiful, they look almost like a root formation, right? So it's really special to witness, right? These are the types of confirmations that we get. And this is from science, right? This is all the ways that we can study these artifacts, analyzing them from a scientific perspective. There's a deep level of energy that we start to get into, right? And I'm a big metaphysical teacher. And so I get deeper into the fact that we are all bio-organic living life forms, and we have a unique capability of resonating with the electrons of everything that's around us, right? And so that's when we get into how we can communicate, and information is exchanged through light and frequency codes. And so, wow, imagine that. We start to touch sacred crystals and artifacts and items, and we get to exchange through vibration.
It's absolutely true.
At least psychic people do.
Every day.
Even, definitely does.
It takes a practice. It takes practice and dedication to do this. You can have a natural ability, but you actually still have to practice and do the practices. When we get to the yin yang symbol, I have got an interesting story about that.
Okay, yeah, well, that's coming later, I guess.
Well, here's one more of the artifacts, just so you can see and people can understand what we're looking at and what kind of a labor of love and dedication you see in these artifacts. Notice that this is one of the elongated extraterrestrials, right? Very big head. And on
big head and the big eyes. Yep.
Right. The beautiful eyes that are depicted as UFOs. Right.
Oh wow! Look at them. They're space.
Unbelievable.
On the back.
We look closer. Yes. Look at all the stuff in between there.
And we notice even this very sacred symbol. We've seen many times as their sigil, but coming out of a planet. So this is very powerful. And these types of sigils, they echo through time, right? And ancient indigenous practices. But notice these gauges, right? These are very powerful. This is a ancient art form that, in a sense, the mosaics as well is something that is honored throughout antiquity, throughout Mexico as a very sacred ancient art form. But look at how all of these hieroglyphics are up all the sides, and the back is completely encoded with information, right? It's a storyteller. So this thing has, information. And once we start to study these, we document the imagery. I actually created a book of symbols as well. It's called the Azatlan Awakening. And I studied over 150 of these tablets and documented them into a vector form, so we can now study them and see them easily, because it's kind of hard to see all the imagery on the artifacts when they're like this. You have to look at them and study them from every single angle.
I know they're very dense.
Very
What's
dense.
that symbol in the forehead? That big circle in the forehead?
So this is unbelievable. I'll compare it to another one as well, because this is one that we've now confirmed is the Star of Ishtar. Okay.
Oh.
With a lot of connections to ancient Sumer and, Inanna, right? There's different goddesses of fertility. And the sun, of course, is a representation of infinite life and infinite energy. So there's
the Akkadians called her Ishtar, but you're right. The Sumerians called her Inanna.
Inanna. So there's
Inanna,
many different connections that we have there of this star, but also being represented as in the goddess form. And so we see that not only in these ancient artifacts from Mesopotamia, but we see them, in these artifacts throughout Ojuelos de Jalisco. And the goddess is also depicted as a representation of our brainstem, which is, like I said, once again, what allows for the secretion of the cerebral spinal fluid to enter into the third ventricle of the brain, which houses the pineal gland. And once we have that sacred secretion, it allows for a very powerful hormonal endocrine activation where all of the microcrystals will actually start to harmonize, and they communicate through a type of cellular electronic electronic response. And so this is the powerful activation that they're pointing out when they show you this location, because we have this hyperactivation that happens also from receiving information through our eyes, right? It's the way that we receive photonic light as information, but we also receive information from our inner cellular expression of biophotonics. And that's what our cells will create when they communicate. It's an exchange of electrical pulses of energy that we call biophotons, because they're generated by the bioorganic living life form that we are. And so this is
that also where we how the aura can sort of feel things is
completely.
I can testify to that happening. I definitely, when we're doing the Gnostic work, the meditation and the chakra opening and the chanting and stuff, I definitely started to be able to feel people coming from behind me, or sense if somebody, I could sense if somebody was lying to me. I just sort of my aura could feel the difference.
Harkening back to the microcrystals and the photons you're talking about, Paramahansa talked a lot about that too, an autobiography of a yogi, and he talked about that through the deep meditation and the things that he did and the self-realization, that he said that human beings can hold the 2 billion watts of light, but you have to train for it. And so that we have that ability in our brains to be able to focus and to be able to have this, what you're talking about is basically another way of saying it, to that cosmic light, that cosmic energy.
Yeah. I know you're very versed in this information too. That's why it's always like exciting. I wanted to hear all the knowledge that you have. So it's really exciting to exchange this information.
Steve is a big PY fan, Paramahansa fan.
Yep. I have somebody I want to talk to you too about the yin yang symbol.
Shall we bring it up? All right.
Yeah, bring up the yin yang symbol. There you go. Let's bring that up. Oops. And it's a practice or an exercise that people can do. Okay. And I just decided to basically draw one myself, about 10-inch diameter. I did it at just like that. And I hung it up on the wall. And when I was practicing Bagua, which is the circle walking, which I still practice, and the Tai Chi, I decided to do basically a regular stance, just basically a square stance, and just trace it just in the air, just in front of me, like about 4 feet in front of me. I just would trace it with my finger and go in one direction and then the other direction and reverse it. Then I would do it with my foot, And then I did my Bagua walking, and I literally was able to astral project out of my body while I was walking. I was walking above my body when my physical body was walking.
Really?
And it was one of these wild experiences in 1982. And it's just like, it all, because I was in the moment. I was basically in a very, very deep, alpha state at least. And I was just tracing it. And I put myself into this waking trance. And it was a really profound experience. And it was again the time when I was like, really, really into like reading Paramahansa's work. It's something that people might want to play around with. Draw yourself your own, yin yang symbol, and just stand in a horse stance and just trace it with your finger.
Yeah, no, that lights me up a lot, and it gets into sacred symbols and sigils and how important they truly are. Like your story of you actually going through the physical experience of creating, right, the sigil. That's the expression of then calling that into our reality, right? So there's ways that information, I believe, can kind of exist in a wave vibration, but once we start to truly understand it, we can then collapse it into matter in our reality. And sometimes by actually sketching these sigils, right, studying the Merkaba, right, on a level, it allows you to then, create the neuroplasticity, opening up the brain to the new potential for that information to come in. And it also like keys, right? That's why it's almost like anyone who even watches this, if you get access to new information, new ideas, new topics, those are opening up those synaptic bursts and locations of the brain, opening up new potential. And so same as the, Drunvalo Melchizedek brought up the flower of life. And if you study that symbol, and they say when you draw it in all of its divine perfection, it'll actually do something to your brain, right? The evolution of the process of understanding the completion of the divine geometry. And so that's what actually, these are the things you're doing. The way that you took this into a level of creating almost like a mandala worth of energy, right? Right? There's a certain type of like what they call that aura harvesting, where you're actually in resonance and you're actually your aura is being activated through this physical, expression of what you're doing. So unbelievable. I really appreciate that. Right.
Sure. My pleasure.
When I was reading, what was that big yellow book you had, that the metaphysical book? Okay, we can't remember, but
that's okay.
It was talking about how to meditate, visualizing the three-dimensional extraction of the flower of life, which is like two tetrahedrons together. It's like a three-dimensional view of the Star of David.
Yes,
right.
The Merkaba.
So you visualize yourself inside this with it, rotated in the right direction, and it would facilitate, more spiritual ascension. Right?
What was that you were showing there, Joshua?
This is a statue that I was sharing of one of the artifacts, but it's just an amazing deity. It's one of the female goddesses, right? They're constantly depicting, right, this goddess.
Wow. Look at her.
But there's also a polarity and a balance to it where there's a masculine, right? So both of these deities and their pineal glands are activated, right? Their third eyes are activated with a phosphorescent stone that glows and activates from the sunlight.
Wow.
So
look at those guys.
Stuff is really deep. We'll get deeper into that in a second. But the fact that you brought up the Merkaba, our ascension vehicle of light, I actually had my crystal Merkaba activated in 2012 in a very powerful way through a meditation. Yeah, it was unbelievable.
Ooh, tell us all about it. Yeah.
Someone came up to me, and I'd actually been mining for these crystals up in Santa Cruz Mountains called Merkabite calcite. I had a vision to go up there and find these crystals. And so I went up to a location that me and my father used to walk to when I was like 8 years old, a big, massive quarry in Santa Cruz Mountains. And it was where they must have had like a cement quarry, but I found out that they were mining for, I believe, gold, right? Because I found some massive old, machinery that was like, okay, this looked like it was on another level. When you went there, it felt very extraterrestrial. Like the walls were so massive. When you get into these types of quarries where you witness the mining that you're doing, it kind of does something to you because you see the vast scale of this stuff. And you even see the size of these tractor ties. I'm standing next to them. They're like 3 times the size of my height. Just one tractor tie. So you're like, what kind of mining is this? But that location, right, I found these sacred crystals when I went back up there after I got activated by crystals, and they were activated by the ultraviolet light. And so I did all this research into them and found out that they were called Merkabite calcite. In the Book of Stones, I identified them. And it did all this stuff to me. I started, because I'd already been researching the Merkaba. I had already sketched it out, like you said, on my floor, and was working with, different movements and stuff to call in the frequency codes of this. Because in 2012, I actually went to Mexico and did a very powerful activation at the pyramids with a bunch of people. It was a sacred gathering where we came together as a collective consciousness for December 21st, 2012. And so
Wow.
very much in resonance with all of this. And I learned from one of the Mayan elders, Akta, about these movements of the Merkaba. And so I've been in complete resonance with this, and these crystals all of a sudden came into my field. And so I've been working with these crystals and teaching all this knowledge about the Merkaba. And this guy comes up to me at my art project at Burning Man, and he says, you know, you are one of very few people that I've ever seen with a fully activated 12-star tetrahedron radiating from your auric field. Have you been doing any work with the Merkaba? And I was just like,
Yeah, no kidding.
laughing. I was like,
You could perceive it, huh?
I
Wow.
look at him and I'm like, do you realize what's right behind me in a treasure chest right now? Because I had a treasure chest full of the Merkabite calcite crystals. Okay. And so
Wow.
for that much resonance and energy to come through, and even my partner at the time, she's like, she wasn't really believing me in the esoteric level that I was taking this information. And so she was like, when she heard him say the Merkaba, she's going crazy because she saw the research I've been doing at home personally. And she's like, whoa, okay, so what's happening here? And he hands me a card and says that I'm supposed to be at this crystalline Merkaba activation. And I was like, what? And when I grabbed that card, it felt like the Matrix, that movie moment where you're like, I'm supposed to be here, right?
The Matrix.
That was the
And-
thing.
Oh yeah, it was
the
Val,
book.
Val Valerian's Matrix 4.
Yeah, yeah.
So feeling
the
that,
book I couldn't remember, you know.
And red pill, blue pill, right? Do I go this direction? Do I go to this or do I not? And I knew I was supposed to. It was unbelievable. And so when I showed up to that activation, he said that he'd been waiting for me. And he said that he wanted me to enter the dome, introduce myself to everyone, explain the metaphysical properties of the Merkabite calcite, and then tell those people, the whole group of people, all the synchronicities that had guided me up to that moment right there. And so I was like, what? And he's like, yeah. And so I was like, you want me to like start the workshop? And he's like, yes. And so I ended up like collaborating with him. His name is Twisted Sage, Brian Esco. He's an amazing individual. But so he ended up guiding us through this beautiful meditation where you basically visualize, right? The two tetrahedral energy fields coming together and culminating in the divine center of your heart, creating the Merkaba energy field. And you call it in with the intensity of the ultraviolet light coming in from the crown chakra and the intensity of the gift of the heart of Mother Earth as a green frequency coming up through your root chakra. And those meet, creating the Merkaba at your heart center, okay? And then you visualize those crystallizing and splitting into three. And then you send the two on the left and the right, spinning 1/9 the speed of light in the Fibonacci sequence out in each direction. And it literally creates a beautiful, this meditation and this visualization creates a crystallization and an infinite spin of your central Merkaba energy field. And
it was Richard Hoagland's work. Excuse me. Richard Hoagland was doing work on fourth dimensional physics, and he discovered that when in Hawaii, cloud chambers experiments were forming perfect hexagons, and he extrapolated that there's a Merkaba inside the planet, and that wherever these points of these tetrahedral tetrahedral structures touch the planet crust, you'll get these like hot spots. And that was why there's Hawaii is because the Hawaii makes no sense why there's a hot spot there. It's in the middle of a crustal plate. It's not along the edges like most volcanoes, but the reason it's there is that one of these points point right at it, and it creates a volcanic hotspot that comes up through the crust there. And from that information, he extrapolated a theory that when the Cassini probe was going to fly over Saturn, it was going to show the cloud formations at the poles cause hexagonal shapes. And then sure enough, that's exactly what came back. So it's almost that like it's the structure of our planet, but it's also the structure of our souls, structure of our
Solar
consciousness.
system.
It's amazing how
I love what you just brought up. Okay, it's also the exact same fractal pattern of a quartz crystal, right? When it stacks into a perfect divine lattice, it creates a hexagon. And like you said, at the apex, they say that there's a cloud vibration around Saturn, creating the eye of the storm, which is a hexagon. Okay, and so, you know, there's actually theories and myths that Saturn actually used to be close enough for us to document. And it's all, the reason I had to do this research is because on all of these artifacts, they show Saturn over and over again, right? Right here.
Yep, there it is.
As if it was within visual sight, okay? And so there's myths that go all the way back where, you know, the name for Saturn is actually, has many different names as well, you know, Kronos as well. And what else do they call it? I have a few, and Shumesh, right? And so there's different names for Saturn. And, you know, it's very possible that they even say, you know, when we get into, I kind of wanted you to bring up those images again of the yin and yang, and then we'll get into
Here comes.
the one of the Masonic compass, right?
Yeah.
Because when we look at the divine center and magnetic north, they say that, you know, the North Star is constantly anchored right over the magnetic north. And they say that that pole star has migrated a few times, okay? Like Thuban. Thuban used to actually be the pole star in when Egypt was created. And so there was different pole stars that have actually, you know, vibrate and change location. And they say that Saturn was actually, through mythology, was actually known to be anchored over that location as one of the resonant pole stars. And it was known as the star of the sun, right? So this is where it gets really interesting. And they believed it was such a bright star, even at night, that it was almost like the secondary sun. And so this is where it's kind of interesting that we see the artifacts have this representation of Saturn depicted on them. On almost every one of the storyteller tablets, we see Saturn depicted and anchored overhead. And so I think there's something there, obviously. And like you said, I just think the hexagon geometry is also very consistent when we get into actual quantum technologies and access torsion field resonance, because it's the same type of resonant field, right? And toroidal fields, right? Circular, but also through analyzing them, you could see that it actually has a hexagonal resonance, because that's what holds, you know, strength and stability as well. So there's little things to it where it's very possible that that could be a representation of a nodal point of accessing, you know, multi-dimensional travel. But I wanted to bring this up right here, this image, because like you said, the Merkaba that, you know, Richard Hoagland, right, had brought up, that there could have been a Merkaba in the center of the earth. Well, the Freemasons, right, this is the Masonic cosmology that we're looking at right here. And I had an 8-minute video that was leaked by a master Mason. And this is what I rendered out from AI. And I actually, personally, after this image, I'll show you the artistic study that I did personally of this drawing right here. And this is how deep I studied it so I could understand and how important this actually is. And it's because it's a representation of the North Star Polaris anchored over Mount Meru, which is the, you know, magnetic north. And so on, is
that this other image, Joshua, here?
So right here is, you know, there's different representations of cosmology that we're shown. This one right here would be a representation of geocentricity, right? Where now we're going to study a little bit of a different version of cosmology than the heliocentric model that we're given. Because, and this has roots in like ancient cosmology. So the way that they're depicting this image here is the yin and yang symbol, but notice how the yin and yang is also a depiction of the sun and the moon. And so they say that when the sun and the moon rotate around us overhead, it's not like, you know, the earth is rotating, spinning around the sun. This is a different model. This is a depiction of a geocentric model where the earth is anchored on a flat plane, almost like a flat infinite plane, but they're depicting an ice ball surrounding all of the continents shown right here as well. And so it's a different version of cosmology, but why it's unique to point this out is because they wrote it as the yin and yang symbol, because that does hold some form of resonance when you start to look at it and say, wow, is it very possible that the sun and moon could be, you know, rotating overhead in some form of harmonic resonance, similar to how if you study like an atom, and break it down to how an electron would spin around the nucleus of the atom, right? There's then a proton and a neutron, which are also holding an anchoring central point. So it's almost like you study the cosmology and say, like, as above, so below. The same way that they said that when they zoomed into our cells, they actually found the similar vibrational resonance to the infinite universe itself. So it's like, are we looking at, are we in one big singular atomic, situation where we're witnessing some form of resonant infinite spin of energy around the nucleus of what you're explaining, kind of like the nucleus would be the Merkaba. But now we can now go to that next image, because in this Masonic cosmology, they show the black sun. Notice how underneath there at the very bottom is a picture of the black sun. And so I actually, from posting a little bit of this information about geocentricity, I had a special ops whistleblower reach out to me, on Facebook. I documented the conversation because he said that he was part of a operation in 2006 that went to a certain location on the map that he knew that they went to a location that didn't exist. He said he felt like it was actually magnetic north, because when they got there, all the compasses were going crazy. And when they finally got there, they said that they actually saw a massive, like, plasmic orb in the center, which he thought was the black sun. And when they got close enough, they actually saw a plasmic energy, like it had a frequency of electricity that vibrated and emitted the symbol of the swastika. Okay, and so maybe, and then this is when it gets so crazy, because after that, I get access to this cosmology from this leaked 33rd degree Freemason. And when I'm studying the imagery, in the end of the video, he draws the black sun as the swastika. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. And he says, right, in the video, that the black sun emits, right, a frequency of light that is the aurora borealis, or the aurora borealis, right, the northern lights. Okay, and so why was this crazy? Because we're talking about the black sun being anchored in the North Pole. Okay, and so the North Pole, and then I'm a collector of all old maps. I study old maps, and so I have maps from the 1500s. And when you study them, I think I might have sent you an image of Rupus Negra. If you look through your emails, there's it's a black mountain in the center with 4 continents that surround it. But on that image, that's what they remove from all old maps, and then they erase the North Pole as any form of a vortex. And so we know that something's happening there with magnetic north. And
before I erase this image to call up the next one, Stephen, what is in Chinese philosophy? What does the yin yang mean?
Well, it's the balance of what is the basic understanding of nature of in fact, the interesting thing about this symbol is that it shows that there is yang within yin and yin within yang. They're not separate. Okay. So the thing is, you can activate it by doing certain specific breathing, because we have yin and yang. For instance, like the human body, the yin part of the human body is the front, the yang part is our back. Just like on a fish, you'll see the belly of a fish will be lighter colored versus the back. Okay, so there's different things. Different things will be yin versus yang. They're yin foods, they're yang foods, but they are all part of nature. Like the Zen and even the Taoists said that to truly understand a grain of sand is to grasp the universe. Well, science says the same thing too. If you just take one particle of sand, it has every single element on the periodic table of the elements. So they knew what they're talking about. And like as far as what I was talking about, tracing this thing, the Taoist symbol of the yin and yang, you do the Taoist breathing, which is the reverse breathing. You stand in a horse stance, and I was really good at this. I can still do it. You basically take from the Du channel, which is from your tailbone, which is the yang channel. You take up from the tailbone on the inhale, breathing through your nose with the tongue against your upper palate, and you bring it to the top of the head to the Bahui point, and then you bring it down with the exhale, keeping the mouth closed, but you expand the belly, and you store it down in the dantian, which is just about 2 inches below the belly button, and you cycle this, and you can literally feel it as a very warm force. You can feel it like a physical force, and it's real. And when you do that, it slows the brain down to about 6 cycles per second. And then when you do the tracing, what it does, you make that connection between the yin and the yang and yourself. So your mantra becomes the mandala, and the mandala becomes the mantra. It's very potent and it really works.
I love it how you tied that all together. I feel like that's all deeply in resonance with, like we talked about earlier, that right there is the breath work, the pranic breath work that actually will pump that cerebral spinal fluid up your divine line, right?
That's what you're moving.
Each one of your vertebrae. And so the circulating of that is assisting in that secretion of that sacred divine liquid. And what you're witnessing, right, is some people call it the voice of God, and they say that that's what the whole attack on our consciousness is about. And when we say that the fluoride that's in our water, right, they say that it actually severs the link that allows, the brain stem to push that sacred fluid up into the ventricle of the brain, which allows you to have that magical experience that you're expressing through meditation and breath work. And so we have to be careful about, the toothpaste, right? That it's a direct attack, right? An oral attack for us to ingest fluoride into our body, which will then block that sacred secretion that happens naturally from meditation, right? Like what you're talking about, this beautiful breath work. And I love how you tie it together to how Mother Nature is the source, right? They showed that as the version, the balance, right? And everything, when a lot of my past presentations have been about this, it's really deep. It's about the evolution of quantum microchip technologies. And when you actually study, the microchips themselves, right? This is amazing. This is actually a National Geographic magazine from, 1968. Okay. And of course it's in direct resonance with what we're researching, but what's this look like,
Yeah.
Yeah. It looks like a computer chip to me.
Right. And people, the most amazing thing is they look pretty similar to a shamanic, tapestry as well. And so the more that you study these symbols, you start to say, well, it's unbelievable, because just like this tapestry that's right behind me, if you look at the very center of some of the microchip technologies, they look exactly like these vibrational patterns that we see that the indigenous people were basically channeling. And so what my theories are is that there's a way that we have externalized and taken advantage of this technology. Of course, all the DARPAs and all the elite military who are out there to basically capitalize on this. We have to look at who else is representing this information from an organic nodal point. And so the indigenous people seem to be, representing a form of quantum technology resonating in their art form, and they're accessing these visual codes because they're doing shamanic ritualistic practices, working with entheogenic plant medicines. So they're connecting to Mother Earth through the entheogenic medicine that they're ingesting, and they're ingesting this intelligence, which is teaching them an organic source nodal point on how to access the quantum field. We don't necessarily have to do it through externalizing and creating these microchips, because that's a form of controlling this frequency band, right? And that's why the silicon microchip has been introduced, because someone understood that they could capitalize on how to control that frequency band, right? Instead of allowing us to just tap in from our microcrystals that we have within us as the divine superhuman supercomputer, right? Because we do it through resonant vibrations. We're all directly connected to the Akashic field of this planet because we are weight. Literally, I had this powerful visualization the other day that, the moment that, a baby is being grown in the womb, right? The mother is taking on that weight of consciousness, right? But the moment that beautiful baby, leaves the body and is felt for the very first time as physical weight into this dimension as its own being, that piezoelectric response of this beautiful baby's weight is almost like its soul's initiation into our quantum holographic simulation, okay? And so the moment that piezoelectric weight is now here experiencing, right? That pressure response of our aura, the moment that our aura is even here, we have a beautiful resonant vibration with Mother Earth, which is what jump starts our consciousness as a direct connection to the Akashic quantum field. And so imagine that, right? We are all of a sudden the weight, the moment that we're here as physical weight on this planet, right? On this physical dimension, then there's always this, communication of the electrons that are in harmonic resonance. So we're always in conscious communication, but we've now
Yeah, they used to call it what's the thing where the mother and the humors, the mother and the baby are connected.
Amazing.
And they have to separate before you can like do certain types of, ascension work.
Yeah.
You don't have to be separate from the baby first,
the Taoists talk about the 10,000 things, because I was a Taoist I still am a Taoist really at heart. I'm a Taoist because I've all the Tai Chi and stuff.
You don't look like a Taoist.
Well, anyway, the Taoists talk about from the 1 came to 2, from the 2 came to 3, and from the 3 came to 10,000 things. Wow. So when I was first starting my acupuncture training back in '86, I was still reading my Scientific American journals. I had one from I think it was '84, and I was in class and I was reading through this stuff about the development of the universe, and they're talking about from the hydrogen, then we got the helium, from the helium, then we got the carbon, and from then everything else sprouted out. So in the article, what I got from it, from when I was reading it in depth, was that science at that time was saying the same thing, that you had to have the 3 to create everything else. Okay. And the Taoists said the same thing. You had to have the hydrogen first to create the helium, then the helium, from then the 3rd element. From those 3 elements, everything else was created. So again, you look at the Zen and the Taoists, they're saying what science finally caught up to saying. Like, for instance, we know that mandalas are just basically expressions of mantras, right? Everybody probably knows the mandala of Om, the sound of God, right? Which is, interestingly, about 652 cycles per second, hertz per second, from the 4th chakra, okay? Now, if you chant Om at the right frequency, if you use either sand pellets or sand grains, or you use holy water, it will form the exact shape of the mandala that we produce.
Yeah.
The mandala for Om is the physical representation of the mantra. Okay, this has been proven by Omuri's work with water. It's been proven with crystals. With sand.
Cymatics, right? Right.
Yeah, cymatics. Cymatics proves it.
Through resonant vibration, right? If we toned collectively together, right, and we created that same resonant vibration, that's what's so powerful about cymatics, is it can actually shape matter, right, and vibrate it into harmonic geometry. So yeah, that's what's powerful. We now know that we have an effect, right, through phononic sound packets that hold, in a sense, they hold resonant vibration, which will allow things to vibrate in divine harmonics. And it's the same way that we can then compare that, right, as an analogy to how a crystal's lattice continuously forms. And so I like to explain it that, it's involved with photonic light holding information, but also phononic sound packets that hold vibration. So light encoded consciousness as photons, but then also it could then hit the earth and then turn in and translate into a vibration, which is then sent into the earth, holding, photonic sound information, but also then translated into vibrational information into the earth. And through this beautiful process of mineral precipitation and crystal nucleation in Mother Earth, she grows this technology, literally. And that's every lattice of every quartz crystal, right? As it's forming, it holds all of this resonant vibration that collapses into that moment of singularity to form that beautiful lattice. And so every single lattice of the quartz holds conscious vibrational source codes, because that light that finally reaches that moment of singularity, it is also in communication through vibration, and it also is in communication through the waters, as the waters hold the resonant codes of all the minerals that they've accessed and gathered along the way. And so once they evaporate, those crystal minerals that were gathered in that water, they recrystallize and renucleate and will start to form. And that's how technology actually forms. Mother Earth has formed this. She puts little dopants, right? They call them impurities within the lattice of the crystal. And that's exactly what we do when we create, silicon microchip wafers right now with crystal lithography. We're basically
you store the whole Bible on there in like one little chip.
No,
on a quartz
the whole
crystal.
library.
The whole library, yeah.
Are you ready for this? Just since you brought that up, Remember I said this magazine is from 1968, okay? Look at the last image on this page, okay? You can get this one. That's a microchip inside of a threading needle.
Wow.
Can you see
From
that?
68.
Yes.
What? Wow.
Okay, so you get where I'm going, but that's the advancement of the integrated circuit microchip technologies and all of this. I have it written down right here. We can get into it. It's about the Roswell crash, right? And there was a book that was written the day after Roswell, where he talks about, it was a high elite, Army military officer who was in control over, foreign technology. But he got appointed to, being the one in control over all of the debris from the crash. And they say that he leaked a lot of this technology to Silicon Valley, specifically.
Is that Cusco?
I think so. Yeah, the name might be right here. But yeah,
Corso.
so imagine that.
Corso.
Corso. Yeah. And so
I'm bad with names. I'll scramble a name faster than I can do a name.
But that's an exciting topic, of course, because they say that technology, right, when they back engineered it, it was like it was bismuth and magnesium.
That's
but
right.
They were micron layers thin that were one half the size of a human cell. Okay. And so when you get into how that process of technology was being assisted, that's what we're doing right now. Okay. Right. This is the nano assisted computer lithographic technology that we're doing right now. Okay.
Yeah. So we swiped it.
Yeah. The bismuth. Yeah, you're right. The bismuth was absolutely pure. It's like 2 to 4 microns in size, whereas they had aluminum, almost pure aluminum, and like you said, the other element too was the aluminum,
magnesium and lead. They found
magnesium,
some lead and zinc.
Wasn't pure zinc involved?
There was zinc, yeah.
All layered.
Why is this so powerful? Because these artifacts from Ojuelos de Jalisco, they're constantly being depicted with a microchip on their pineal gland, right?
Yeah, so lots of times.
Everything about this full process, it's like I'm writing a chapter right now called "The Gig Is Up," and it's all about because it's about the more that I look at the comparison of these sacred indigenous tribes, right? Take for example the Shipibo tribe. And I wish, you could have seen my last presentation I just did at the Alien event in LA, because I did an hour-long presentation I created over 50 new diagrams comparing, right, the shamanic tapestries in comparison directly visually to the microchip evolution and the geometry that we see within the microchip. And so what that tells me is that, even what we want to, history has told us that, these indigenous tribes were primitive. But what were they doing that was so primitive when they were literally, accessing the quantum field, doing it in a harmonious, organic way, where through these fire ceremonies, because I've actually been personally invited to these very sacred, traditional fire ceremonies where I was the only white person there. And these were at the highest peaks of Ixtlan del Rio in Nayarit in Mexico, where a lot of the Huiratica tribes are rooted, right? And they do these ceremonies at the highest peaks of these mountains because that's where you're in a direct resonance. There's a certain, we talk about the atmosphere, holding different elemental resonance, right? That's how you can program information, right? And that's how information is sent, technology is sent through the atmosphere, traveling at the speed of light, right? And that's how through resonant vibrations, our quantum microchips are allowing that information to be received through sympathetic resonance, right? So there's a frequency band, right, where information can be sent. And so the higher up that we go, right, you got to think that our consciousness and our electromagnetic field starts to harmonize with the elemental frequencies at higher elevation as well. And so these ceremonies are being done in a very important location, and the fire that they're using, they take it in as a form of plasmic quantum access nodal points. The fire itself is held so sacred, and I think someone accidentally make a mistake. You're at these sacred fire ceremonies and you go and you're eating your fruit and you throw your banana peel in the fire. Everyone stops and goes, hold on. And they freak out and they take that out because this fire is so sacred. You're basically communicating with 7 generations into the past and 7 generations into the future. And so they're basically, you can't be throwing your trash into this beautiful.
No, you can't do that.
You threw a banana peel on grandma's head or something?
And so they take it very, very seriously with the intentions that we're putting into this fire. Okay. And this fire has been kept, the carbon of the fire is kept. And they've been using that same carbon for over 40 years, taking it to 6 different locations around the planet to do this indigenous ceremony with all the tribes, because this is the original ancient fire ceremonies that they held sacred. And this was the technology that they were doing and how they were documenting this information into the Akashic field through these organic resonant, ceremonies. They weren't forcing their way in, and it was happening in a very sacred way. So anyways, I know I just got off on a random topic, but
I sometimes wonder, our theory about how the aliens are not really aliens. They're humans that have mutated living underground for thousands and thousands of years, because we think they went underground to escape the Younger Dryas comet.
Which did hit 12,850
And so
years ago.
they kept all their technology, where the rest of us were just thrown into the Stone Age,
Wow.
But we think the Anunnaki thing is real, but that, the Anunnaki uplifted us 300,000 years ago. We think from Homo erectus into Homo sapien. And in that way, all of us are a bit alien. Every Homo sapien on the planet is part Anunnaki, right? Because they use their own DNA to uplift us.
And also, ergo, too, of course, the presence in Central America and Mexico that goes much, much further back than
way back in time.
Basically, underlines what Sitchin was saying, but that the presence was here.
I think the Anunnaki had these settlements where they created these pyramids and started mining the area, but the humans that were with them were essentially slave labor. So the humans of those settlements are relatively primitive, but the technology of the Anunnaki and the way the Anunnaki work is kind of like the same way the Masons work. It's a hierarchy system. You don't learn the mysteries of the technology of the Anunnaki until you reach higher levels, So they would have a whole priesthood, and their kings would usually be relatives of them that could claim higher Anunnaki bloodlines and so on.
Bloodline, yeah, of course. The strength is in the blood. The Chinese say the same thing. The soul's in the blood.
But we think they utilize us and breed us like, we think because we went underground, they're having trouble maintaining their numbers now. They might need to mix with us,
Feels like it's all kind of still happening, of course, right? When we look at the bloodlines, and like you said, there's myths of the Hopi. They talk about the ant people, right? That
the Anunnaki,
we were saved and protected by the intelligence of these beings as well. And then the splicing of the genetics of the human race, like you said, the Anunnakis creating the humans. I don't know if we talked about this last time, but there's myths even involved with these artifacts because they show that quantum microchip technology on the third eye. But it was very possible that they say that when they created the human design as a slave race, they redesigned the human brain with gaps and lacking certain connection nodal points, right? So lacking connection points for the nodes and receptors of the brain to have full access. And so when they created the human design, they left out gaps in nodes. And crystals were actually meant to be the resonant device that would complete that circuit. And so imagine that right now when we're getting into this technology where they're creating nanographene oxides that are entering the brain. Are we being told something else where they're trying their hardest to re-assimilate and connect those circuits that were left out? Are we trying to play the hand of God again and maybe these nanotechnologies? Because that's what's happening. And if we want to tear into this real fast, because I'm passionate about this, because we're carbon-based living life forms, right? And we then start to think, well, the quantum technology right now that we've evolved to actually has to do with diamonds getting into access nodal point through the diamond. Because like I was saying, those dopants, those they call them a distortion or a impurity within the crystal. A diamond that is a carbon-based crystal, like the same as a human, but we're a living version of carbon. But the diamond, now imagine that. If we want to talk about technology, we can think about the carbon resonance of quantum technologies, because the diamond is giving us access to the quantum field through a nitrogen vacancy location. and it allows for the quantum bit to be emitted in resonance. So the actual lattice, the atomic structure of a diamond houses it creates the exact environment to create coherence, quantum coherence and resonance. They usually need to have a cryogenically controlled atmosphere so that there's no thermal distortion, which will affect the qubit in any way, so you can actually hold consistent resonance with it, okay? And so the diamond is what provides access to the quantum field through the qubit. And so you got to think about that. If we're carbon, then we should be working with carbon-based technologies. And so whoever understood that, who understood the quantum resonance, they all of a sudden understood, well, this is important. Let's now use carbon as the form of graphene, right? Because graphene is a singular layer. It's one singular atomic layer of carbon. And it actually can communicate with the blood very easily because we're carbon-based living life forms. So whoever created this nanotechnology understands that that singular atomic layer of graphene can now communicate with the blood. It can actually become one with the blood. It can then pass through the blood-brain barrier, and that graphene then oxidizes. And the moment that we get graphene oxide, that now can be susceptible to pulses of electromagnetic fields, right? This is what's happening because
So
then
like
they can actually.
this is how you would create a cyborg, so to speak, right?
Yeah, well, they can map, every human's brain is unique. We have dendritic growth patterns that are like fractaline 5 ratio, dendrite patterns that grow infinitely. And so we all are unique. It's like a fingerprint. And so if they want to study how every human works, right, they had to get in there with a certain form of technology that could basically simulate and follow those neural pathways of the brain. And then you find exactly how those emotional responses will be like creating triggers, right? And so it's how they want to understand how our eyes take in information, how that information is received to the amygdala. And as an emotional response, they want to follow the synaptic neural pathways on where every emotion actually will go. And right, so then they can control and assist where our emotions will be going. And all this stuff is very high tech, but of course you want to understand, how do you control the population when we're becoming so evolved and we have access to this technology that is,
this is where it really bothers me, because the word keeps on getting used as control. Because it always gets down to, like, so for instance, like
Control,
when I used to teach Chinese medicine and that kind of stuff, said, listen, anytime you have a thought, it lays down like this little deer path, like on whichever of the brain, whether it's the thalamus or the amygdala or the neocortex. It's like this little line that's like drawn down by the axons and the dendrites, by the neural connections and the chemical pathways. So you just make this little line. That's like a short-term memory. Now, if you keep on underlining that line by thinking about it or redoing that task, the line becomes not just a deer path, it becomes like a gravel trail. And then it becomes a dirt road. Then it becomes a highway. And then it becomes a super highway. Yes. This is why people that are in their 80s, they can remember things they did when they're 8 years old and 10 years old, but they can't remember what they did yesterday. Because what happens is that as we get with the amyloids and the different things that corrode our ability to encode new information, that deer path just basically, it's like putting a mark on fresh paint that's in a kitchen, that you're trying to paint over a kitchen that has had a lot of grease in it. So you're trying to put a new coat of paint over all this grease, and the paint ain't going to stick. Yeah. So that's what happens. That's the reason why our older memories, like long-term memories or older memories, are there, because they're literally like Grand Canyons.
It's like being
compared
etched again
to
and
the
again,
new memories.
Yeah.
And so what we have to do, like with these new neurotropics that are coming out, is allowing us to be able to encode and remember. And I actually know how to remember stuff in long term. I can take stuff from short term and put it into long term.
Yes,
I can do that. A lot of people don't know how to do that, but I know how to do that, and I do it all the time.
You should do a workshop.
So it's just like these are things that we need to know. People need to know this, because the thing is, I really tried to teach people when I was a doctor, of Chinese medicine. I said, listen, I don't want to see you for the next 20 years. I want to give you the tools so that you can take control of your own life. Yes. You don't look at me as your master or as a control. you look at me as a way to give you back your self-power, because we're all here to learn. We're all here to get self-empower, right? We're not here to be controlled. And I really, really chafe against that thing about control, because, you know, they always want to try and control us, you know, control the masses. Well, screw that.
Yeah.
Let's veer back to
Admiral Byrd. Let's do Admiral Byrd.
Well, I wanted to ask Joshua first, because I uploaded these two other graphics. I was wondering, is one of these one of the ones that?
Yeah. Yes, that right there. So this is in the very exact magnetic north on all older maps. Okay. And there's 4 continents that surround that. That's the magnetic mountain that they claim is why all compasses are guided to this sacred vortex location. And unbelievable, what a powerful topic that, you know, our soul's journey, in a sense, to follow that magnetic north and figure out what exactly is happening there, right? Is that nucleus nodal point? Is that where the black sun is located, right? Is there some form of a very powerful elemental energy there? Because when you get into magnetics, there must be an overwhelming amount of electrons in some form of extreme resonance that are ready to pair with another electron, that are literally calling in anything with the resonance. Okay.
Oh yeah, the magnetic field is amazing there. It's there,
and they say,
circles, you know, back in on itself, you know, and
right. And it could be a vortex. It could be, certain people say, you know, entrance to Earth, right? Agartha, right? An advanced civilization that could exist. Extraterrestrial, right? Earth, right? They say that's what that word means. It's extra Earth that hasn't been, you know, it's beyond what we're being told. Okay. And so these older maps that you have from the times, they show this beautiful mountain, and they call it Rup Negro. And think about that. One of the biggest corporations in the world is BlackRock. You know, so they understood exactly what this black rock vortex energy is, and they don't want anyone to look at it. Okay. And
Joshua, could you repeat the name of it? We lost you.
We lost you there for a second.
For a second.
Was it Rupus Negra, right? Or Black
Rupus
Rock?
Negra.
Yeah, because, or Hyperborea, Hyperborealis. Right. But like I was
there
saying,
it is, right there. Rupus Negra is on the map in the gray part there.
Yeah, so they imagine that, and then like I said, the big corporation called BlackRock. So these big corporations, they know all about this, and they put it right in your face, right? That they don't want anyone to think about this sacred vortex anymore. And I'll explain that even deeper on a good way that they get you to forget about locations like this. You know, think about how easy this one is. What are we told about the North Pole when we grow up, right? About Santa Claus, right? Santa's from the North Pole. And then we're like 4 years old, and we realize our whole life that everyone's been lying to us, right? So the first thing that we do, this is a manipulation tactic to get us to completely forget about this location and never look back, okay? Because our whole life, and we're kids, we're Santa Claus from the North Pole and Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. And so when we hear that that was the biggest lie, it crushes our soul when we're little kids. So we never look at the North Pole. We never give it any validation. That's their number one trick that they did. They shattered our imagination on that location as a young kid, so they could make you never look back at it and actually hold any validation, okay? And then they erased it from all older maps because this location is very important, okay? I mean, there's a reason when they say magnetic energy holds resonance. You know, honing pigeons have magnetite in their beak, and it's how they know exactly where they're at all times. And so they don't want us to know that we have magnetite that's housed within our third ventricle of the brain, because we have access to knowing exactly where we're at in this, you know, call it a quantum holographic simulation, because that's what quantum physics is starting to prove to us, that we're actually in some form of a sacred simulation. And if you back engineer what's happening in this exact moment right here, it's like we're taking in, you know, billions of synaptic bursts of intelligence and collapsing it, right? Our pineal gland is actually receiving all of that information, and it goes from, you know, photonic light, and then translates. Our eyes can translate into a bioelectrical signal that the brain can then receive and translate. And so the brain can actually now receive the three-dimensional expression of intelligence that we're experiencing as an emotional reality. And it actually creates that in every moment, right? It's like, you know, billions of synaptic hertz per second are flickering, creating the holographic simulation coming from the crown chakra as like a toroidal, you know, holographic simulation that's interconnected. That's how we are. And it's so it's so intimate as well. It's how we get to all interconnect and share our thoughts and vibrations within this experience. So it's evolving.
It's one of the reasons why people, like even animals, people seek out psychedelics and things that basically open the consciousness, because there's all this, you're right. We're receiving billions of bits of information per nanosecond, basically, but we're only able to really filter a very, very small percentage. Otherwise, we would go insane.
Yeah.
We're not trained. If we were trained to be able to handle it, it would be okay. But we're not trained to be able to handle it. That's why even bears, they spend all this time by themselves, right? They will literally seek out, this is documented true, they will seek out magic mushrooms just so they're not so freaking bored, so they see things differently,
Well, like you said, I feel like the way that technology has evolved, right? We're giving little teeny crumbs along the way. And as our phones can now hold up to 50,000 photos and then access to the infinite nodal points of the Akashic records at this point, to the internet, then our brain has to then grow throughout that process, because like I've explained, if your phone has 50,000 photos that you've taken or documented, that means you in some time took the moment to document that and store it within some form of a data bank within your consciousness. Okay. And whether or not you stored that in the short-term memory or that long-term memory, right? It depends on how deep you want to go with that. But
so that's how we access the Akashic record then.
Yeah, I believe deeply. My theories on this has a lot to do with crystals, of course, because a natural crystal, right, it holds a consistent vibration to it, right? The quartz crystal specifically, I mean, we use the silicon microchip for, holding vibrations and taking in signals. And then that is translating that information to where the computer can then receive it and then translates it into a holographic simulation that we receive either as an audio signal or a visual signal. But when we get into the access nodal point, when you're working with a normal, natural, organic quartz crystal, and it harmonizes with the human body, right? The human bodies, our electrons can actually then go into a state of resonance. And when we apply the pressure to the quartz crystal itself, it then creates that piezoelectric response where the electrons will then go into an excitation state, releasing an electrical pulse. And that electrical pulse can go into resonance with the human's biofield. And so once we have a crystal that we're resonating with, we can actually start to, create sympathetic resonance. And if we have in our past lives, gotten to a certain level of crystalline resonance where we were working in harmony with crystals, and we then can recognize that vibration, then all of a sudden things start to happen to you, and you start to wonder, well, why am I having these thoughts and this information come through me? And it's because you're actually frequency matching to a consciousness, right? In a sense, imagine that, right? It's like the higher that our vibration goes along the way as we're evolving, then every moment that we get to a certain level of consciousness, we can then frequency match and access the thought vibrations from past lives. And so this full process of conscious ascension is that process of being able to access our highest levels of conscious resonance along the process.
And give us continuity of consciousness, possibly.
This is
look what Steve has. Yeah,
this is my generator crystal that I got from a.
Of course, you have a crystal. And I knew you do, and I knew you would, of course. And that thing looks like, okay, so, and also we can talk about, that looks like a natural crystal. It doesn't look like it's been, and so when you study crystals, this is a big passion I've always had, because people will polish the tops of crystals and you can actually push away the source codes. The top termination actually has
the terminator
record keeper, vibrations. They almost look like binary codes. And it's the expression of the lattice growth formation of the crystal, like I was explaining, as every single lattice slowly forms. And that's why the quartz crystal, if it grew for, hundreds of thousands of years of every single layer, taking in all of that intelligence, right? And then documenting it as a singular layer of crystalline resonance into a dense form of matter that we can now hold and actually experience an exchange of information through resonance. I mean, that's just so beautiful, because now we know that we have access to accessing information that is ancient and is sacred.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's amazing what science is catching up to, what kind of like what the mystics knew, and what we're just like rediscovering stuff about. Like you look at the Dropa stones, you know, the one or two that still existed, the ones again they show hieroglyphics on basically like a
Little
record.
tiny micro ones.
Yeah, and they're just storage devices for information.
Yeah,
Completely.
it seems like they were computer disks or something.
Like we were pointing out, you know, the size of that microchip that fit into the thread of the needle, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's and these artifacts, they have that type. I've been documenting it's micro engraving, and I've ran it through my AI and stuff, and it's like 1/50th of a micron thin. It's like they say like almost like some of the engravings are like 1/10 the size of a human hair thin, and so we don't necessarily have a Dremel tool that can engrave that thin of engraving on anything at this point. And so
no, and I've looked closely at our piece, and the lines are the same width, the same depth, perfect arcs and curves. Like if you were trying to, there's no way anybody could hand draw these lines. It's amazing. They're quite mind blowing. I wanted to go back to what you were saying about the human being lacking some of our electric components, so to speak.
Yeah.
There's a story that Sitchin talks about this. In the Bible, it's the story of Babel and the Tower of Babel. I have a theory on what happened with that. The Anunnaki, Sitchin's theory is that it wasn't like just a tower that we were trying to literally build all the way to the sky. It was a launch tower. So that's how you make a tower to heaven, is you make a tower that can launch rockets to heaven, right? And Sitchin had his whole thought about how humans were trying to build their own launch tower to the sky, and the Anunnaki didn't want humans to have that power.
And then after that, of course, then the humans were divided up to the four corners of the earth and taught different languages.
Yeah, and thrown all higgledy-piggledy everywhere. And also, I think this is the time when Enlil decided they wanted to limit our lifespans. Before this, we were the human beings were living the Adamic race lifespans for about 1,000 years.
Methuselah.
Yeah, but now there's stories about how Enlil wanted humans to be more limited, and one of the ways of limiting us was to shorten our lifespans. But I think also maybe he may have disabled parts of our consciousness or possibly parts of our brain, like you're talking about, how we seem to be missing something,
Yeah, I completely resonate with everything that you just said. And that's kind of what I'm explaining. And our whole process of gathering this information is what we actually have. And these artifacts, they really seem to depict exactly what this myth shows us, that they designed the human, right? And it has a lot to do with the grays as well, because when you study these artifacts, and I'm talking about, there's sacred tablets. These are storyteller tablets that are over 2 feet long, and they can stack together like, stone books. These are tablets that in a matter of time, these things will be, like I said, honored through antiquity, and then humanity will be ready to integrate that information in. Because as of right now, when the authorities, everyone wants to submit our consciousness and our beliefs to some form of an authority that we are, everyone's waiting for the authority to tell us our answer to everything. And so these artifacts are in that same category. We have a certain amount of a collective consciousness isn't even ready to accept this type of information, that there could be 50,000 of these sacred ancient alien artifacts that are encoded with true knowledge of our historical timeline that needs to be studied with dedication. Because when we go to sacred sites, like take for example when we go to Egypt, right, it's been honored through antiquity, and so we go there with a consciousness that's ready to accept the hieroglyphic language, right? We're ready to then accept and integrate in this cosmic experience that we're having, because we now, as a core belief system have said that we are experiencing something that is sacred, right? And so when you are looking at these ancient alien artifacts and your core belief system says that these are fake, you know, because no authority has honored them, then your own skepticism, right? This is your belief system that blocks out any possibilities of accessing the true potential of the information that's encoded within them. And so
Mike Forrest thinks that the legacy program here in our government is helping to fund the cartels to create fakes and to create a false narrative about them. Do you agree with that assessment?
You know, there's a lot of crazy, like, you know, conspiracy theory stuff around this topic. It could be possible that someone's trying to capitalize on this, obviously, because it's a very intriguing topic. The Ojuelos artifacts that I've been researching for the past 10 years, I think are a whole different energy. You know, we have master chemists who have been doing, you know, scientific studies with nano microscopes. And actually, you know, Trevor Miller just went into Europe and did a private presentation with Joseph Davidovitz, who's one of the oldest researchers into geopolymers. And their research is unbelievable. It's so groundbreaking that they're coming to understanding that a lot of these ancient sacred sites are created from an ancient form of polymer, right? Like they were molded and shaped and hardened into place. And
in fact, this kind of feels, this one here that we got from you,
polymer feel,
it's got a real feel. It's really heavy, but it's also so smooth. It's got the feeling of the geopolymer.
I want to be clear. We don't, we're not saying that Joshua's or Michael's artifacts are fake in any way.
No.
Yeah,
but,
they're unbelievable. The Tula Hidalgo artifacts are unbelievable. We actually,
they're doing all kinds of evaluation of them and authentication of them.
Yeah,
and,
his funerary,
lots of different studies.
His funerary jar that he has had the carbon residue in it of like maybe like some organs that were stored.
Yeah, like somebody else's kidney or something.
They're dating up to like 38,000 years old.
Yeah,
you know, he's doing the
and that throws the land bridge theory out finally. You know, so that's an enormous theory to finally sweep under the rug and get rid of, because it's been stupid. I mean, there's been 1,000 discoveries that refute it, and yours.
The anomaly with those artifacts, the Tula stuff, is that they have so much information encoded within them, and it's kind of a wild topic because it takes a deep level of esoteric study to be able to even understand the amount of information that they've encoded in these artifacts. And so it's it kind of confirms itself when you study them and understand how vast the amount of information that we see is. And so that's why I give validation to the Tula pieces as well. You know, they're obviously, you know, like anything that gains this much publicity, you're going to see people trying to replicate it, you know?
Right.
But there's things that you can't replicate. And it's when you look at these ancient geopolymers, the material, it's not easy to just cook up the exact same recipe of an ancient, you know, tribe or ancient lineage, civilization from thousands of years ago. Right?
Like trying to figure out how the Romans made concrete. You know, they made it so much better than ours, but we don't know how they did it. You know?
Exactly. So there could be, you know, some of the pieces right now that could have been coming out. You know, there's pieces that have electronic components, right, where there's certain pieces where it'll actually activate a source of electricity within the artifact. Have you seen those yet? Yeah, and so, but those are being studied right now. You know, people are saying if it's possible that they've just, you know, taken an ancient artifact and manipulated it to add components. I mean, a lot more research has to be done. We actually took about 10 pieces to a lab and x-rayed them and found, you know, technology within them. And so we're about to cut some pieces open and stuff. So a lot of exciting thing is actually happening in the background with the artifacts right now.
Well, you know what? That brings us to the point where we want you to be able to advertise yourself as far as what's coming up, like with Contact and your book, because we are almost like at the 1.5 hour mark. And
we'll have to bring you back on to talk about some other things another time then, I guess. But
yeah, what with this is great. Actually, I'll go over just the list of things that I was gonna talk about, and then if anything rings a bell, we can do it next time, of course.
Of
Great,
course.
This is just what we've gone over. But yeah, like once again, like I said, I'm trying to grow my YouTube. If you want anyone who is intrigued with the level of information that we're sharing with the world, because we go into a form of like an open channel, and we're happy to share this information with humanity so we can all access these, you know, unique source codes that are coming through. And I like to think about this experience like, you know, my brother, he is a video designer. So we have these theoretical thoughts about what it's.
Joshua, I think we're losing the audio.
We lost the audio there.
I'm so.
Are we
Are you back?
Yeah, you're back now. Yeah.
So yeah, it was just basically me and my brother. My brother is a video game designer, and so we always have these theoretical talks about what is this, and he says, you know, after designing full simulated worlds as a video game designer, he says the only thing I can actually come to a possible confirmation is that we're in a simulation. As a video game designer, he sees so many similarities of how this all works as a simulation. Okay. And so if we're experiencing this as a simulation, and, you know, I make this fun comparison, like Zelda, if anyone ever played that game Zelda, but like, if you're going through this beautiful world, you know, you couldn't necessarily unlock what was beyond what you had access to until you had a sacred experience. Like it would say, go to the town hidden in the woods and talk to the wizard at the castle. And then all of a sudden you get access to this flute that gives you the capability of blowing the flute and opening up a new part of your world, right? And so this is what I'm explaining why, because I believe these experiences that we have, people witnessing your show, people getting access to these stories that we share, are those moments, right? This moment right here is one of those moments where you now have access to the flute, which opened up a different access nodal point to your reality. And so the more that we can expand the possibilities of our world, opening up new potentials, because every moment we're evolving. And so if we are in a beautiful holographic simulated experience, let's take control over this beautiful reality. And if we can get access to the magic, right, by accessing information that's so sacred that takes our consciousness to another level and opens up new locations for us to explore. So I don't know. I thought that's a fun thought because it's very possible. You know, that's what we're doing.
I've had this experience a number of times where I have a dream within a dream within a dream.
He was just telling me about it.
Where I'm watching a reality, like, and I believe that I'm in it, but I realize that I'm watching it like on a TV screen. Okay, so now then I realize that, okay, I'm watching it on a TV screen, but I'm also in a dream myself, but I'm watching a dream while I'm in a dream. Then I get out of the dream, or I think I get out of the dream.
And he comes to tell me about the dream. I go and
tell Leslie about the whole thing, and then it turns out that Leslie's also in a separate dream. So it's a dream within a dream with a dream. Then I finally wake up in that third one, and then I actually tell the real Leslie about what I experienced.
You really did.
It's like almost like an Inception type thing. But this was way before the Inception movie was made. You know, it's like I have these from time to time.
Or the Rick and Morty making fun of it.
Yeah,
you know?
I love it. It's a powerful confirmation. Yeah, that your pineal gland is fully activated, right?
Of course.
Your microcrystals are vibrating, giving full access. You know, they even say that, like I was explaining, the fluoride in our water creates a block which will no longer allow that cerebral spinal fluid, that sacred living crystal liquid, to reach that location of the brain. And once that sacred secretion is no longer in and reaching that ventricle of the brain, it actually will create, it dries up. And like I was saying, that mineral precipitation happens, right? Where the calcification will start to form, and it will block those retinas, right? They say that they found, that's why they call it the third eye, because it has the same photoreceptive cells that our retinas actually have. But where are they receiving light from? They're receiving light from that sacred activation, the sparks of those microcrystals from that inner ventricle of the brain. But if it dries up and calcification forms, there's meditations you can actually do to awaken and break free from the calcification that has blocked those retinas. And
no kidding.
Yeah, I learned this personally. This just happened through meditation. And so this is my own personal theory. And I did some diagrams on this. I can send one over, but it happens when, you know, when you're in an airplane and you hit a certain level of pressure and your ears want to adjust, right? So your inner ear canal, the Abduction tubes, right, will readjust through pressure, the pressurized environment of your inner ear. Okay. And so that's why we go like this and you pop it. Okay. And so right here on our jaw, there's actually a tiny little bone. And so when you open your jaw to a certain level, and then you actually block the Abduction tubes. So what happens is when you do this and open your jaw to a certain level, and then you hum and vibrate, you'll know when you've locked all vibrations from exiting, because a vibration is sent inward. And you'll actually, if you do a vibrating vocal tone, it sends your vibration inward, and it'll vibrate up that divine channel and send a vibration into the third ventricle of the brain, and it will start to vibrate calcium crystals off of the actual retinal photoreceptive cells. And so it's a meditation.
The other thing I've tried too, which it seems to work too, there are different types of tuning forks that are tuned differently to different, like, an A is like a 440. You can strike a tuning fork and you put it on your chakra. So you can get the tuning fork that's more like around about a 700 or 800, whatever. Put the tuning fork right on the third eye and vibrate it.
Completely.
Bing.
Love it. Definitely.
That would be another one to try too.
Yeah. There you go.
I love it. So my partner's a massage therapist. She has tuning forks, and we do that. It's amazing. There's different locations, right? So anyways, I know we were supposed to talk about Admiral Byrd and his son.
Oh, let's catch it next time, my darling. Yeah, we're at the hour-and-a-half mark, and my leg is falling asleep. So.
Totally. And then, how Admiral Byrd passed. What do we know about the secret diary? Because there was that diary that was published called The Hollow Earth by Dr. Raymond Bernard. And he mysteriously passed from pneumonia when he was looking for an entrance to the center of the earth in Brazil.
And didn't Admiral Byrd's son die mysteriously?
As well.
That's one of the things I wanted to ask about.
Yeah, we'll tune in next time. And then in 1947, the same year as the Roswell crash, right?
But in February, yeah.
Right. So it was the same time that, they reported that that's when Admiral Byrd had flown into inner Earth.
Yeah.
So around that time, there was a lot of exchange of information coming from some higher civilization that might have had information that we could work with and back engineered, whether or not we were gifted it. And this is all just story to kind of cover up this process and hide that from us. But
I believe our government is trying to suppress the meeting between Admiral Byrd and the Ariani, whom I believe are alien cousins that are, basically hiding under our feet.
That's what Bigelow says anyway about skin marks. If you really want to know the truth, it's right under our noses.
And I think that, what you're saying about the Greys having these little chips, in their third eyes. I think I've always wondered if the little Greys tend to behave like robots. And I've wondered if they're an organic creature though, with nipples and clavicles and biceps and everything, but they tend to behave robotically, and it made me wonder if they didn't just jam a chip into their foreheads and then control them that way.
That's for next time. Yeah,
there it is, right there, jammed in there, all four of them.
Yeah, cool.
That's for next time. Yeah, for sure.
All right, my dear, thank you so much for being our guest today. And this was really mind-blowing, and I really appreciate it.
And, with StreamYard, we have to let it buffer for a couple minutes.
Yeah, so. After we stop recording, stick with us for just a couple minutes.
Yeah, I will. Like I said, and anyone who enjoys this research, come over to my Instagram. It's the same name. It's Ancient Aztlan. You can see it right there. ANCIENTAZTLAN. I have same name on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. So go on over there, share, like, and subscribe. And I appreciate the work that you guys are doing. It's been a great conversation today.
And for our audience too, you are going to be there with your wonderful pieces there at Contact in the Desert.
Yeah, we'll be there too. So audience, come see us. Come say hi,
Okay. It's our favorite event of the year. Anyone who goes, you're going to have the best time of your life.
It is the best time.
It's the best event of the year. Yeah.
I apologize for mispronouncing your name. I think I said Aztlan, like the lion in the Witch in the Wardrobe.
That's very cool. I like it. Ancient Aztlan, either way.
But it's Aztlan, yeah. So anyway.
Okay.
Appreciate you all.
Well, we'll sign off for now.
All right.
Peace
Thanks,
and
dear.
prosperity.
Bless.
Leslie, you're kidding me.
What?
Our merchandise store is up?
Of course, my darling. All of our amazing concepts of shirts, mugs, and bumper stickers are ready to go.
No way.
Way.
Even my brilliant Egyptian concept that no one else ever thought of before?
Yes, that one too, and lots more. All at our new store at etsy.com/shop/abductions101.
Wow. I want a shirt and a mug and...
Well, Stephen, and all our curious listeners, just go to etsy.com/shop/abductions101 to see all of our unique designs.
I'm going there.